New Abyssal is up on test. We now have a good basis to assume what's the best strategy and trees as well as bosses. So today we have somebody very special to talk about them with me. Would you say hi?
Hey guys, I'm Arty. You guys have probably seen me on here plenty of times. Just here to banter and talk about our expectations for this new AE.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so let's talk about the first stage. I think Zafra is pretty special. Both on the disrupt and what he does, I think he's going to be a very big noob trap for people starting on him very early. What do you think?
Yep, I think the big thing to note is he has basically all the skills that a normal Zaf has, but he'll have higher stats than usual, and he will be unCCable. So heroes like your usual Iron be very effective into him, and I think you're going to have your best use out of ranged celerity heroes or sustaining celerity heroes, maybe Cecilia, but I think your MVP here is going to be Lucretia. With her 9/9 furniture, she can stop Zaf's ult, which is very high burst. As well as if you take the risk of having your own heroes die, her amplification will be very powerful in outputting some nice damage.
Yeah, I agree. I think because of the stun, a lot of might and fortitude heroes are not going to perform as well if you're talking about Source or Isold, at least in those early stages. As well as obviously they're harder to clear camps with very early. And also Respite might be pretty interesting in this one. So I think while Fortitude and might be too clunky, and they will suffer from the ult that deals a lot of damage. People underestimate how much damage that thing will deal. I think if you wait enough and you do use those celerity heroes, either canceling the ultimates, handling the ultimates, or countering it, I think it'll be all right.
I fully agree. I think your best bet is usually going to be to start celerity, or if you're trying to invest towards later fights or a final boss, maybe your Fortitude investment is the right call.
There's actually going to be two sets of bosses that I think are not going to be as interesting, the first and the last one, for Oscar and Titus. Which one of these do you think is going to be more scary to kind of watch for?
I definitely think Titus is going to be your more difficult hero. Whenever you're fighting an enemy Titus, he's just going to do more damage than Oscar, and he's also going to CC more than Oscar. I think you're going to have to be very particular with your placement of heroes versus Titus as to avoid his fear hitting too many heroes. But I think he'll be controllable, given you just have good relic investment.
The only thing that I think is risky about Oscar is him like spiraling dodge or starting to be too tricky to hit. But I think if you either burst him, you use your mage heroes, either team will do fine. I think even lower accuracy heroes like Might and Fortitude might actually even be fine into that boss.
Yeah, I don't think Oscar is going to put too much pressure on your teams unless he manages to scale through multiple ults and ends up starting to pick a decent hero or two.
All right, so with Dark Nomura and Idra, there are two return bosses, Dark Nomura being susceptible to those mage bosses. And I do hear there's one celerity strat that's going to make a return on Idra. Do you want to talk about that?
Yep. So a lot of people may know with usual celerity strategies, I think the average damage with 5 celerity heroes is around 110 million. But some things that people discovered on the first Abyssal with Idre is that if you use 1 or 2 celerity heroes, you're usually going to be able to output around 30 to 40% of the usual damage with far less heroes than you would on a normal team. So you're able to stack up more total damage by running 1 or 2 hero teams in the Idre versus a full 5.
All right, so I think that's really going to be relevant, especially if people stick more strictly to these mage and carry sides. But I think we did learn something about that, which we will cover in the 3 section in just a second. But lastly, I think the most hype boss for this one has to be Ezizh. So Ezizh abilities, what do you really want to watch out for in this one?
I think the biggest thing you're going to need to watch for is him having his totems up. So what he does is every once in a while, he will put up 3 totems that you need to kill. Because with these totems up, what's going to happen is your team is going to get stunned. You're going to have damage happening constantly. And if his totems are up, put a burning fire on the ground, that'll start to chip away at your team.
Another thing that I think is going to matter here is how much health is lose health when they talk about the Abyssal Roar. Because if this is going to be any faster than Althalia bleed speed, I think it'll really carry things strong towards the celerity end, where otherwise maybe some sorcery comps like Irons might work pretty well at clearing the totems and landing enough damage through.
Yep, I think it's kind of hard to theory craft with this initial boss, but from what I can tell, your Sauruses will probably do pretty decently, given he doesn't have a ton of disrupt, but a hero like Grez might struggle if you can't bring down the totems. I think all of celerity might sustenance always being a good support for Ezizh in any boss.
Overall, I think celerity is going to be like the winner strat here. I think it's going to be the easiest to do. From the very earliest stage of the game. Like if you're starting celerity, you're pretty safe off. And I think you're going to find the way to land the damage through the bosses. What do you think about Fortitude and Might in this one?
I think Might is probably going to be pretty good if you're building it second or third. I don't think it's going to want to be your initial build. I think given that there isn't any limitation as to what you need to go anymore, whereas Ainz and Albedo did limit your overall trees, I think Celerity is going to be a very easy, consistent start for most players. And then from there, you can move into your Might or your Fortitude. I think Fortitude will probably shine less than last AE. However, Grazul and Damon are always very powerful heroes, and they may shine past expectations.
Mm-hmm. So it really depends, I think, on the benchmark of where do you kind of equate all the trees and how do you plan ahead. But I think you could even get away with Dark and Nemora Celerity if you try really hard. However, Sustenance, I think, is still going to be one of the stronger trees, being a global second or third pick for most anybody.
Supporting your boss fights, giving Twins, Mortis, Rowan survivability. I think overall, if I had to give an expectation build path, I'd probably start Celerity, move into a Might second, and then into a Sustenance third to support it, and then see what you need to finish it up.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I do want to cover though is there might be a case to be made for final boss sorcery mains. While we did not get as many new sorcery introductions as we did Celerity introduction, I'm really hot for Respin on this one. I think he might actually be relevant to some extent, with Ainz typically supported by Belinda or Safiya in these higher end replays.
Yep. With last AE, the meta team at the highest end was a combination of Saurus, Safiya, and then Estrilda, Twins, and Mortis. And there's a very high chance of a similar team returning, given the AoE and overall sustained potential of that team.
Mm-hmm.
I would expect some changes. Every boss does change expectations, but I think there are some strong cores that have already existed through this format of AE that may return.
And I think much like the last one, we'll still have some key heroes being relevant, like Saurus buffs, Isold being Isold, like you talked about, Grazul you talked about, and Damon maybe existing will still be relevant going forward toward this one. Yo, Arty, thank you so much for coming along. I think this really clears up a lot of things around this next Abyssal. Any final words comparing it maybe to the last one? How many changes and what we can expect going forward?
From what I can tell, I'd expect it to play out very similarly, however, much less frustrating at the ending point with being limited during your entire AE. I think it's a good return, and I hope that so far it isn't too stressful for anyone.
Alright people, and like and subscribe for this endgame tier list update that's going to premiere coming up in a second. Arty, one of the content creators I respect at the utmost level who helped me kind of nail every single pick. Speaking of things that don't need change, yo, that tier list is fire.
I think so too. It did look really good from what I could tell.
See you there, and for now, I've been Linger. Peace.